Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds is considered by many to be one of the franchise's best shows, and a large part of that is because of what I consider to be its Part 1, which houses the first 64 episodes. And in those 64 episodes, we get one of the most beloved stories in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, the Dark Signer arc. I'd recently just watched it for the first time, and I was amazed at just how much story, world building, and character dynamics were stuffed into a few dozen episodes. However, it wasn't perfect, and needless to say, we have a lot to talk about. Spoilers ahead, obviously. But before we get to talking about any of those spoilers, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. So, let's start at the beginning. What makes this arc so special in the first place? Well, I believe a good way to answer that is by comparing it to a similar arc that, while not bad per se, definitely missed the mark. That being the Shadow Rider arc from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Spoilers ahead, obviously. With both arcs, you have an evil group that has to be stopped by our protagonists, some of whom have bad blood with each other, in a series of mostly 1v1 duels in order to save the world. Along the way, secrets are revealed about lost family members, and someone who was thought to be an ally ends up fighting for the away team. So yeah, pretty similar if you ask me. Now here's where they differ. The two evil groups, the Shadow Riders and Dark Signers, are both fully defeated in the end by our heroes. Obviously, these are Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows after all. But listen to how they are defeated. The Dark Signers had 7 main members. Divac was beaten by Leo and Luna, yes, I'm using the dub name Sumi. Riger was defeated by Crow, Misty was beaten by Akiza, Carly was defeated by Jack, Yusei beat both Callan and Roman, and Rex was taken down by the team of Crow, Jack, and Yusei. So that means of the 7 members, 5 of them were beaten because of help from the sidecast. Remember that, okay? Now for the Shadow Riders, they had 8 members. Dawn was beaten by Chaz, Titan was beaten by Alexis, and everyone else was beaten by Jaden. And it's not like Jaden needed all those wins either. Nightshroud was possessing Alexis's brother, so don't you think Alexis should be the obvious choice to duel him? Zane lost to Camula in order to protect Cyrus, so wouldn't it make the most sense for Cyrus to be the one to take Camula down? And Bastion did not need to be put down like this. Come on, man. That's 3 duels that could have easily been switched in to help develop the characters and make them more credible. Alexis could have truly cemented her place as Queen of the Obelisk Blues by taking out more Shadow Riders than anyone else not named Jaden. Cyrus could have proved his worth a long time before they actually remembered to do it in the show. And Bastion could have been saved from being made into nothing but a joke character. Look, I love Jaden. He might be my favorite protagonist, but he did not need these wins. We already knew he was strong. We didn't need that point hammered into our skulls a bajillion times. Sorry, this just turned into a GX rant. This was supposed to be about 5Ds. But now you see where I'm coming from. 5Ds felt like it was the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Show that actually respected its sidecast. I must stress that this is 5Ds Part 1, and gave them not just things to do, but also great character arcs to come along with it. Just look at my favorite character from the show, Akiza. At the start, she was a great duelist but a broken person under the control of someone we will talk about later. But by the end, she finally learned how to connect with others and move on from her past tragedies. It's great, it's awesome, and it's leagues better than anything that Yu-Gi-Oh! Girls were given before. Taya, cheerleader, Mai, jobber until that one arc, but then they forgot about her. Alexis never really had a character arc. Blair, she got me to platinum in duelings. That's my biggest compliment about her. And it's like this for nearly every main character, because even though some of them lack in number of duels compared to the other series, they make up for it by just being good characters. Do I wish that there were a few more low-stakes episodes just to have a breather from all the crazy stuff? Sure, but in the end, it doesn't take away from what is ultimately a great story. Although... Alright, let me just get this out of the way. I think that most of the Dark Signers are good villains. They each bring something special to the table and have cool decks to go along with them. But that doesn't take away from the fact that 2 of Part 1's biggest villains were kind of disappointing, those being Rex and Sayer. Rex's problem is that he's the final boss of the arc, and he only duels twice, and both times he loses. In fact, it's another similarity to the Shadow Rider arc with Kagemaru. Sure, they both have something that makes them stronger than everyone else, but what's the point if we never see them win with it? And Sayer, for as cool as he is, gets majorly sidelined after pulling his best Geese Howard impression. We don't even know how he survived. And even when he came back, the main thing he did was try to fully awaken Akiza's powers, only to end up being eaten by an Earthbound immortal. And then later, we learn in a promo book that he was arrested after being brought back. So while both were cool characters, I feel like neither of them were used to their full potential. Ah, Crow. What can I say about you that hasn't already been said? That's a legitimate question, by the way. You think I've watched every video on Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds and its flaws? But let me get this out of the way. In the context of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds ending in its first 64 episodes, I think Crow is a pointless character. I still like Crow, and I think his deck is pretty cool, but he was not needed in the slightest. And there are three main reasons as to why I think that, and they have to do with Lazar, Akiza, and Divac. For Lazar, my main problem is that Crow had very few duels before the final showdown. His only duel against a named opponent before facing the Darksigners is against Lazar, and that duel didn't even get to finish. Even Luna had a full duel before facing Divac. And speaking of Divac, I also don't think he was ever planned to be a real character in the first place. Because imagine this, if Crow didn't exist and Divac also didn't exist, that gives us a rematch between Greiger and Leo, who already lost to Greiger, and Luna, the one who was supposed to face Greiger. Doesn't that sound like a more narratively satisfying duel than the one between two guys who have never met before? So in a way, Crow robbed Leo and Luna of a perfect endgame duel. And speaking of robbing someone of their perfect endgame duel, what do I even say here? Crow did not deserve to take Akiza's spot against Goodwin. Plain and simple. He also didn't deserve to become the new 5th signer over Leo, as both of them got way more development than Crow ever did. And again, I like Crow. I feel like I have to emphasize that, but it's hard to like him when he keeps taking spots over characters that clearly deserve them more. Okay, I'm calm, I'm chill, I'm great. Let's just move on to the next segment. I need a moment. Okay, so now that I've got my major complaints out of the way, let's talk. How would I fix the show according to what I personally would have liked to have seen? Well, I can answer that in 10 easy steps. Number 1. Crow and Divac are not characters. For reasons stated before, I feel like the story would have benefited from dropping these guys. 2. Leo and Luna duel and defeat Greiger, who in this case would probably have the monkey Earthbound Immortal. Again, pretty self-explanatory. 3. Yusei was the one to look up to the legendary man instead of Crow. This is arguably one of the only ways Crow was relevant to the story that didn't feel forced. It even comes up again in the duel against Rex, so it feels like something important that can be added to Yusei instead for the sake of not losing it. 4. The final duel is Yusei, Jack, Akiza, Luna, and Leo versus Goodwin. I feel like none of the main team should have been left out of the final duel, and this is probably the easiest way to incorporate all of them. 5. Leo becomes the new 5th signer. No explanation needed. 6. The Crimson Dragon and the King of the Netherworld are actual cards, as well as dual spirits. Like, if the Crimson Dragon and the King were the two big boss monsters of the show, shouldn't they have card variants that were used? I know the Crimson Dragon has one, but the King has nothing, and I feel like it would have been a cool boss monster to set Goodwin apart from the rest of the Darksigners. 7. Luna deserves at least one more duel before Divac. She's a signer, for heaven's sake. 8. The Arcadia movement is not some massive global conspiracy, and instead just has a few members, because, you know, psychics aren't exactly supposed to be a common thing. Also, none of them besides Akiza and Seiya are relevant anyways. And also, Misty apparently takes them all out in one night, which wouldn't make much sense if there were hundreds or thousands of them. 9. Psychics can summon ghosts, not dual spirits, actual human ghosts. Specifically, the ghosts of anyone who they've had a close bond with. And I'll explain why this is important in number 10, how I would have taken Sayer's character. After his defeat against Carly, where we see how he survived, Sayer makes it his mission to find out more about these Darksigners and why exactly they're so important. After all, one of them nearly killed him. Through his investigating, he finds out that Rex Goodwin seems to be connected to all of this somehow. So he wins a duel against Lazar in order to get to him, and when he reaches Rex, they also have a duel where if Sayer wins, he'll get his info. However, this time Rex ends up winning, thus making him a more credible threat, and before Sayer can do anything about it, Rex ends up being able to extract a piece of his powers, meaning that by the end of the arc, Rex has not only the powers of Signers and Darksigners, but also the powers of a psychic duelist. And to make sure that Sayer is no longer a problem, Rex, in a moment of narrative irony, proceeds to throw Sayer out the window of the building they were dueling in. And when Sayer reaches for his deck to make another dramatic escape, he looks in horror as Rex reveals he stole Sayer's deck. But this isn't where his story ends, because flash forward to Akiza's duel with Misty, where Akiza by this point has tried to contact Sayer's ghost multiple times to no avail. So in a moment of desperation to give Misty the truth, as well as answering a few of her own questions, Akiza removes her limiter and fully unleashes her powers. Sayer's ghost appears in front of the both of them, but after revealing the fact that he was the one to send Misty's brother to the Shadow Realm, Sayer uses the momentary calm to try and take over Akiza's body for himself, thus fully revealing to her that he really was just using her as a means to an end. We then get what I imagine to be an awesome sequence in Akiza's mind where she and Sayer are fighting for control. Not by dueling, mind you, but by using their psychic powers to summon out real weapons to fight each other with. And by the end of it, Akiza wins, fully surpassing Sayer and finishing him off by sending him back to the afterlife. Although that guy's obviously going to hell. And afterwards, Misty gets taken over by her Earthbound Immortal, and the rest goes on as normal. Well, my normal. And if you liked my ideas for that rewrite, I bet you're definitely going to love the video where I came up with ceremonial duels for every character in OG Yu-Gi-Oh! If you're interested, of course.